There are times where we are in job search mode. There are times where we are hopeful for a new job, and you never really know when you're going to need to brush up on those skills. So no matter where you are in your job search journey, I'm super excited that you're all here and that you want to learn with us. So thank you for giving me some of your time. You all rock. We're going to get into the meat of things. Before we do that, though, I actually do something I don't really love, and I'm going to just acknowledge is kind of awkward for me. I kind of have to talk about myself for a few minutes here. And the reason why is because it's a part of the learning process. Most of you have absolutely no idea who I am, right? And so in order for you to learn with us today, in order for you to hear the message I want you to walk away from, you have to trust me. And that is totally valid and legit. And how can you trust me if you don't know me? So I'm going to share just a tiny piece of my story so that you get to know me and you get to understand why I'm even qualified to teach you about interviewing, getting hired, remote teams, and what this whole virtual workspace is all about. So if you will bear with me for just a few minutes, I appreciate you all. I'm going to share a little bit of my story. So my story starts in the classroom. This is my actual classroom. I was a high school history teacher. I loved it. I loved my students. I loved curriculum design. I loved helping people get from point A to point Z and understanding something big. There was, however, a lot of things I didn't love about teaching. And the main thing was I really didn't like the lack of flexibility. I often got told, oh, that's a great job for a mom, but it actually really wasn't, right? I was never able to go on a lunch date in the middle of the day with my husband. I couldn't call out sick if I got sick or my babies got sick. I couldn't pee whenever I wanted. It was really just kind of feeling like I was stuck. But I persevered probably longer than I should have. And it wasn't until my baby was 1 that why became very, very crystal clear to me. I just got a master's in that field. I thought teaching was going to be my forever thing, but it just became increasingly inflexible and too hard to maintain. I needed something more able to go with the flow. I needed to work remote. So kind of took a leap and I quit that job. And I pursued so many random things. I took so many bad contracts, made so many mistakes, did a lot of stupid work for not enough pay. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot of lessons. I was scrappy. And eventually I got a good, real first job. This was my first job. It was a truly remote job that was not halfway a scam. I saw this job posting and I knew I wanted that job. I knew it was with a company I believed in. I knew I could do the work, but I had 0 receipts because I had been out of the job force for a couple of years and I'd never done this type of work before. I'd been a teacher. So I put the pedal to the metal and I put in so much effort into that application, the resume, and that interview. And somehow I talked to this amazing woman into hiring me and giving me a shot. And that was the start for me because this is where I entered into that marketing operations world of business. And from there, I just kept getting new opportunities and moving up. And eventually I ended up in the director's field in this kind of space. And the thing that was consistent, no matter all the different jobs and things I did, was virtual, flexible work. That was the thing that no matter what I did, I had to have that piece. It was the most important thing to me, was working remote and having flexibility. During the time when I was working as a director, I started to do a lot more hiring because there was just more people to hire to do the work. And so over time, I hired, interviewed, managed, onboard, and led tons of other remote workers. And it really became my sweet spot, was hiring virtually, leading virtually, and just helping it be a cohesive unit. It was really fun and something that I did for a lot of different clients. I'm very lucky. I've gotten to work with people all over the world. I've gotten to interview thousands of applicants. or excuse me, I have reviewed thousands of applications. I have interviewed hundreds of people. And then I've just been fortunate to lead large and small teams of virtual workers. It's a sweet spot for me and I really love it. I did start to feel that calling though, because flexible virtual work meant so much to my life. I just felt like I was missing this piece of helping other women like me, and no matter what other stage of life they were in, get that same gift, that same flexible lifestyle. So about a year ago, I started to create a new company called Virtual Work Studio, which is what brought all of us here today. It started because I kept getting asked the same questions by friends and acquaintances. How'd you do it? How'd you get your foot through the door when you had no experience, when you weren't the most qualified candidate? And so Virtual Work Studio is my answer to that. It is the bridge between having no experience in order to get the job, but how do you get the job if you don't have experience? You know that conundrum that we all go through? How do I get experience if somebody doesn't give me experience? That's what Virtual Work Studio is it's our way of giving you simulated experience so you can go out into the real world. So let's get to it. Why are we even talking about interviewing today? Well, in my opinion, it is the most important and crucial part of the job hiring process. And I'm not alone in believing that. 73% of other hiring managers agree that this is the most important factor in hiring. There's been a lot of times where I thought a application was going to go one way based on the resume and the application, and then the interview changed my mind in whatever direction, because it's just the best way to kind of get to know somebody and feel if they are truly the right fit for the role and for the team. So the interview is incredibly important. Unfortunately, it is also one of the areas that people struggle with the most, in my experience and in my opinion. It's really hard to be good at interviewing, and that sucks because it means that a lot of hiring managers are missing out on really good qualified candidates simply because they're not shining in the interview. So that's what I want to start to fix today. I want you to start to feel qualified and shiny in interviews so that you can put your best foot forward and get that opportunity. I don't want anybody to miss out on hiring you just because your interview skills are a little bit rusty. Interviews are hard. It's really hard to demonstrate who you are in 30 minutes and what your skill set is. It can be made even harder though if you're experiencing one of these things. If you lack confidence, you're just like not sure you can even do the thing. If you're rusty, if it's been a while since you've had an interview, and especially even if you've had a interview recently, but you've only had one, it's like riding a bike. You got to go a couple loops around the block before you start to feel certain on your feet. And then lastly, if you don't have a strategy. So the strategy piece is what almost everybody is missing. Most people go into an interview kind of winging it, and that's the thing that can often bite them in the butt. At the end of the workshop, you're going to have a chance to actually get on live with me and test things out. Because again, being rusty is one of the things that keeps you back. We do full mock interviews inside of Virtual Work Studio with our students. So this is a pretty cool opportunity for you to get just a little piece of that. So let's start by demystifying interviews just a little bit. Let's try to make them a little bit less scary for you. So I want you to start reframing how you think about interviews and start thinking of them as storytelling. Interviews are just stories. You are telling a story about yourself, about your past, about your current situation, and about what your hopeful future will look like at that company. You are just sharing your story. But in order to do this effectively, you do have to be a good storyteller, right? You have to be that master storyteller. And there are 3 storytelling foundations that I'm going to teach you today that are really going to help you master that. These are kind of fancy words that are used in, an English Lit 101 class, but it's going to be really effective if you can put them into practice when you're preparing for your interviews. So the first thing I'm going to teach you how to use to your advantage is cliches. Then we're going to move into narrative, which is a fancy way of saying storytelling, and then foreshadowing. So all three of these things together will help you become a master storyteller in your interviews. Let's start with cliches. These are things that happen all the time. They're predictable. They're common. There are common cliche questions that happen in an interview. These are the ones that you hear over and over and over again. And I bet that all of you, when I said that, immediately had some pop into your brain that you have heard over and over again in different interviews that you have done. We can all assume that some questions will be asked in an interview. No matter what the job is, there is usually some kind of overlap. So preparing yourself ahead of time is going to really help you to not stumble and to maximize your time. Part of the interview process is to get the most bang for your buck. And so if you can use cliches to your advantage, then you're going to be prepared and you're going to not ramble on for too long. I'm going to tell you a little story. I'm going to be a storyteller before we move on about one of our students. This is Julie. And I'm going to share with you a couple different examples from actual Virtual Work Studio students. Part of our program, as I mentioned, is to do mock interviews. So we'll sit down and have a full-blown job application process, and we will go through every single part of their job application. And one of them is a mock interview. And this is, by the way, this is an alias. That's not her real name. That's not her real picture. I'm protecting her identity. But this is going to be a real snippet from her actual mock interview, because I want you all to see that, again, this happens to all of us. You're not alone, and we can fix it. So even if you're not feeling confident in your interviewing skills, there are things that we can do to make you better. So I'm going to show you how Julie answered a question, and then I'm going to talk about how we fixed it. So the question I asked her is, tell me about a difficult conversation or situation. You've all heard this, right? Tell me about a time when, how would you have handled this tough thing? We've all heard some version of that question. So when I asked Julie this question, this was her answer.
Most difficult was probably going to my husband and saying, I feel like I need to take a step back. That was an extremely difficult conversation to have because he did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. I just kind of felt like we were both stuck in this situation, and to create for anything to go further, or even for us to develop personally, we needed a little bit of separation. We were working together all the time. We come home, we do life together. Our marriage is not in trouble. Like, I don't want you to think that. It's just that I needed to grow. Mm-hmm. And so taking that step back was definitely very hard.
So Julie had been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years, and she'd been helping her husband run like the admin side of her business, or of his business, excuse me. And so she had not had a professional interview in a really long time. And so this question that I asked her really threw her off, and she just kind of came up with something right on the spot. The first thing that popped into her brain, probably the most freshest and the most recent thing. And you can tell from her response there that she kind of started to panic as she was talking. It was that, I actually really kind of hate this phrase, but that word vomit thing where like it just started to come out and she was sharing more than she really wanted to. And when you wing it, when you aren't prepared to answer some of these most common questions, that's what tends to happen. You either ramble or you share something that doesn't help you or could even possibly hurt your chances of getting that job. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to share with you the three most common. There are quite a few most common ones, but these are probably the top ones. And I'm going to give you just a little bit of time to start to think about it. So whether that's just in your brain, start to imagine how you would answer something, grab out a notebook, grab out a sticky note, start to write bullets, open up the voice notes on your phone, whatever you want. But I just want your brain to start to turn and to think how you would answer this question. You will need to prepare these questions in more detail after the call today. We don't have time to really fully flesh these out, but I want you to have the chance to start to think it through, okay? So the first one is just like what I asked Julie. Tell me about a difficult conversation or a situation that you've had with a coworker or a boss. How would you start to answer that question? I'm going to give you 1 minute to answer this. It goes super fast. All right, so time is up on that one. Hopefully, you started to be able to jot down some ideas there. Let's go to the next one. Tell me about yourself. This is your elevator pitch. What have you been doing? Who are you? Where have you been? Tell me your experience. It's going to be some version of this question. And when you're starting to jot down your thoughts on this one, I want you to start to think about, what does somebody actually need to know about me in order to believe I'm qualified to do this job? They don't need to know your full life history. In fact, they probably need to know a lot less than you think. So just start to jot down, what are the most important parts about me and my past that somebody might need to know. All right. Ominous red timer is up. Last common question that I want you to prep today is, what are your strengths and weaknesses? This is one that was mentioned in the chat. Now, weaknesses, don't fall into the cliche that you often hear. I work too hard. I care too much. Cliches can be bad on the other end as well. So start to think about ways that you can talk about maybe something that you struggle with, but you have overcome, or you have learned to adapt in the workplace. So your answers to this will be obviously based on the job that you are looking to pursue, but I want you to just think about, how can I paint myself in the best possible light when answering this question? All right. I know that time went super fast, but hopefully we started to kind of get your brain wrapped around how you would answer these questions. The best way to nail an interview is to display equal parts competence and warmth. And so if you've got these answers down pat, you're going to be able to do the competence piece, and then you can focus on being a little bit less nervous. You can smile. That warmth piece is important as well. So those are the top three. To round this out, let's go back to Julie, right? How did she do? Because she was nervous and she was not wanting to wing it in a real situation. So we dug in deeper, and I asked her a lot of questions about her experience prior to being a stay-at-home mom, and she had amazing answers to things. I just had to give her the confidence to tap on that experience, even if it was 10 years ago. We came up with a really awesome answer to that question, and we rehearsed it and perfected it, and she really nailed it. And so when she went out onto an actual interview, she felt so much more comfortable answering that question and displayed herself in a really great light. I was actually able to make an introduction for Julie to a business owner that I knew, and I got a really great text message from her a couple months ago letting me know that she'd been hired. She nailed the interview, and she was hired for her first ever virtual assistant job. So it's pretty amazing what you can do when you start to just tweak and rehearse those interview questions. All right, so we've mastered cliches. Now let's move on to narrative, which is a very pretentious way of saying the story, the beginning, the middle, and the end, right? So when you control the narrative, that means you as the storyteller are in charge of what details get told. You want to have a beginning, you want to have a middle, and you want to have an end, but you don't have to include the whole kitchen sink. You're going to keep your answers clear, succinct, and then tie everything up in a neat little bow. This could look like maybe explaining just the right amount of why you left a bad work situation, right? I think we've all had that where we've left a job that was kind of toxic. You don't want to go into deep of details on that. You also don't want to leave them with questions. It could be giving enough of the details for a tough work situation that you went through and you came out, victorious on the other side. Maybe it's a comfortable answer for why there's a career shift or a big resume gap, right? It's helping them understand a clear picture with just the right amount of details. So I have another example for you. This is Bridget, one of our students. Bridget was really interesting because she had 15 years experience as an executive assistant. So a lot of the things that you do as a virtual assistant is very similar to what you would do as an executive assistant. But she'd been in person. She had been in an office, and she was really struggling to break into the virtual work field. So she joined Virtual Work Studio, and she was great at interviewing. Her interview was really excellent, but she just was not getting any bites. She kept getting to the interviews with like real jobs, but just wasn't moving on from there. So her mock interview was very enlightening, and we learned a lot about probably why she wasn't moving on to that final thing. So the question I asked her that allowed me to figure out what was going on was I asked why she'd left that job. If she had been an executive assistant, why is she now trying to be a virtual assistant? And this is how she answered that question.
I ended up leaving that company probably midway through COVID. It was an events-based business, and obviously events went right to nothing. So they had laid off quite a few people. And during that time, our family had actually made a big shift, and we had moved to Florida. So it was a time for me to kind of reassess what I wanted to do as a career. And I was able to do a little bit of schooling and go back and do some flight training and kind of pursue some different passions. So
as you can hear, she's very confident and capable in answering that question. She gave a really legit answer. She moved across the country. How could she possibly work an in-person office job when she's across the country? That's a legit reason. But because she kept going and kept giving a few more details than maybe she should have, it set my alarm off as a hiring manager. She ended that by saying that she was doing some flight training and pursuing some different passions. This is an example of losing the narrative. She's no longer in control here, and it's not getting tied up in that neat little bow. It makes me worried as a hiring manager that she's only here temporarily. Now, no job actually thinks that you're going to be there forever and that's your only passion. But in the interview, they kind of want to believe that. So I was afraid that Bridget was going to leave my virtual assistant job in a couple of months to pursue flight school and to go be a pilot. Employers want stability. They don't want to think that in a few months, they're going to have to just retrain somebody else. I was left wondering, am I just a temporary stop on this person's journey? I'm not feeling confident that she's the right hire anymore because I'm pretty sure she's just going to go ahead and leave me. I don't know the whole story, right? And I'm now left wondering, what's the rest of the story? Sometimes even interviewers can inflate it, right? They can put in a lot of missing pieces that don't actually exist. That's just our human nature. So your job as the interviewee is to control that narrative and not let them think any more to the story than what it is. So there are 3 things that you're going to do to control the narrative: beginning, middle, and end. So I'm going to give you a pretty clear structure on how to do that. There's different ways to do this, but here, this is a good and fast beginner's rule. The first is to restate the question. That's how you can begin to control the narrative. And it sounds a little hokey, but it really kind of gives the interviewer the signposts that they need to follow along with your story. It also gives your brain a few extra seconds to collect your thoughts and put it all into place. So she could have said, there are 2 reasons I left that job. So I'm immediately going to flag, okay, I'm looking for a reason 1 and a reason 2. And then she's going to fill in the details in the middle, but she's going to give just enough of those details, right? We moved to Florida and that job was only available in person. Reason number 1. I also realized that a remote job is better aligned with my preferences and life ambitions. Reason number 2. This is truthful. This is honest. But it's not saying that she's pursuing her pilot's license. And so now I'm acknowledging that I have passions and other things I'm pursuing, but it allows the hiring manager to feel certain that that job is in fact aligned with her future goals, right? She was in fact trying to become a pilot, but she still wanted to be a virtual assistant. She wanted to do the 2 things in conjunction, but most employers aren't going to believe that. They're going to believe that she's going to leave. So this allowed her to answer truthfully and let the employer still feel that confidence. And then she's going to wrap it up at the end in a nice, neat little bow so that they feel like they have the whole answer. It was hard leaving a team that I'd poured so much of my time into it, right? She wants to come out smelling like roses, but I'm ready to invest my talents in a new company. She is making them visualize her in that role, right? She came out smelling like roses. So once we perfected that answer and we kind of, worked on her elevator pitch and those other kind of things, Bridget got a job before she even graduated from the internship. Like I said, she was super qualified. She just couldn't figure out why she wasn't getting those jobs. And so we were able to really help her put her best foot forward so that employers felt confident in hiring her. So like I said, before she even left, she had a job. She sent me this message in our team Slack that really made me smile. I'm blowing the socks off of my boss right now. I love that. All right. So your third and final storytelling mastery that I want you guys to learn today is foreshadowing. That is essentially giving away the ending, right? You're going to drop little clues. You're going to say things that make them see you in that role. You are foreshadowing yourself in that role. You're painting the picture with you as the lead character. Remember, this is your story and you are the lead character. And so the way we do this is by dropping words, jargon, skill sets, specific examples, and using language that inspires confidence. They want to believe that you're the best person for the job, and they need to feel confident in order to get to that point. Too often we spend too much of the interview actually talking about the past, right? It seems like we should talk about all of the experience that has come before, but especially if you're pivoting, like a lot of you are, into a new field, you might not have the past experience that perfectly matches with that job. So instead, you need them to feel confident that you can do that role. You need to, project how you're going to bring that skill set into that new job and fit into that role. You are the kind of person who's going to blow their socks off. My final student example I have for you is AJ. And she had zero virtual work experience. Like, she had never even done like a Gmail signature, or joined even, like, she'd done like maybe 2 Zooms in her whole life. She'd only ever worked retail. So she was really, really nervous about her worth and her ability to become a virtual assistant. Even after we did all the work inside of Virtual Work Studio to make her feel equipped, she was still feeling really nervous. And so when she got to that interview, those nerves came out. I asked her the question, I kind of like gave her a scenario, right? Describe what you would do in this situation. How would you learn a new software at a job? So this was AJ's answer.
I would maybe do some research on my own to learn about the tool or the program that he's asking me to use, and ask either a coworker or even my boss for, hey, do you have any tips or tricks for somebody who's new to this? How can I best use this in the most time efficient way? Because I don't want to spend days learning a task if he needs the project to be completed in like a week. I don't want to spend the first 3 days learning the tool.
Okay, so let's leave aside the ums and the the filler words, because we all do that, right? We don't want to sound robotic. We're all human. We can tighten it up a little bit, but that part of it is fine. That's not the big deal. The part that really alarmed me as the hiring manager is this part right here. I would ask a coworker or even my boss. That is going to be a red alert for a boss or a hiring manager, because you're foreshadowing, but not in a good way, that you're going to be the kind of person who doesn't figure out stuff by yourself. You're going to be coming to them, asking for help when they're hiring you because they want you to fill a need in their organization. You're not inspiring confidence if you say something like this, right? We're foreshadowing in a bad way. Your client or boss wants to hire somebody who makes their lives easier. They need to believe that you can do the job. And if you're not sure how to do it, you're going to figure it out. You want to be the whole package, right? You check every box on the list. So in order to foreshadow positively in an interview, there are a couple of things I want you to keep in mind. I want you to always go back to, am I inspiring confidence? Am I making them feel like I can do this job? Even if I don't know how to do something, I will figure it out. So AJ could have said, one of my best qualities is resourcefulness. I know I could figure it out quickly and efficiently. So ding, 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 right away, I'm already feeling like, even if she doesn't know how to use the software, she's the kind of person who can figure it out. And then she could have created a little bit more peace, not make me feel like, I'm going to have to lead this person through everything at this job. She's going to do this by being specific, right? It is okay to say, I don't know how to do that thing yet, but I'll figure it out. I know what tools are in my kit. I'll use Google, ChatGPT, YouTube tutorials. There's so many free resources out on the internet. I'll figure it out and I won't bother my boss. And then finally, she's going to be specific. She's going to talk about how once she's figured it out, here's how she's going to use that new software or program or whatever it is. So those 3 things will help foreshadow positively, to visualize you in that eventual role. Remember, you are the leading character in this story. Cast yourself as the leading character in that story. And that confidence piece was the biggest thing that AJ needed. And we worked and worked and worked until she really believed and knew that she could do that job. And that came across in the interview. She's got a happy story as well. There was somebody else that I knew who was looking for a virtual assistant with her skills, and I hooked them up with an interview. And she went into that interview feeling confident and calm, and she pitched herself And this is the text message that I got from the person who I knew, right? The person who hired her. By the way, I hired AJ. I can't wait to work with her. And look at that text down at the bottom. I told her, like, this is total chaos here. Are you down? And she was, because AJ now believed in herself and she had inspired that confidence in the interview as well. So we have just learned the 3 master storytelling techniques: using cliches to your advantage, controlling the narrative, and foreshadowing yourself as the lead character. And that is going to be a really helpful set of tools when you go into your next set of interviews. But you're not going to be able to get there just by hearing it, right? Just by knowing the information isn't quite enough. You're going to need to practice. Practice is what helps interviews feel less hard, less scary, and takes away that rusty piece. So now is your opportunity for those of you who are feeling brave to get in a hot seat with me. Now, oh, I love it. You're in the car too.
I am. I'm on my way to summer camp pickup.
I love it. A true multitasking woman. Tara, tell me about a difficult situation that you have had at work.
Great question. One of my many difficult conversations as a healthcare leader has come when talking to staff about being on time or remaining focused on a task when I know that stuff in their personal life is really difficult. And one of the tough parts about being a leader and being compassionate is also kind of keeping the goal on focus and keeping the team moving forward. And one of the ways that I've found to have those difficult conversations, sorry about my kiddo in the back, is acknowledging the strengths of my teammates and my team and lifting them up while also holding the standard and allowing them the freedom to know that, like, it's okay to have difficult moments, and let's figure out a way together to step up and to rise up and to kind of work together beyond this tough thing so that we can achieve X, Y, and Z.
Thank you, Tara. I just have to say, my mama ovaries are always happy to hear a baby in the backseat because my kids are 10 and 7 and I don't have those sounds anymore. So I liked it. Okay, so here's a couple things that I loved. I loved that you cast yourself as the lead character in that answer. You were talking about how, as a leader and in leadership positions, that was so good because immediately I was like, oh yeah, Tara's a leader. So whatever I was going to be hiring for, that's immediately placed in my brain. I also liked that you talked about something that makes people really uncomfortable. That is a true uncomfortable situation that pretty much everybody can identify with. I think it could have been stronger by being really specific. So had you told me about a specific difficult conversation with a specific direct report, that would have stuck in my brain a little bit more. And I would have, again, been able to visualize you having that difficult situation and then coming to that beautiful, peaceful situation at the end. So I love that that's your answer. I think those should be your bookends. But in the middle, I'd love you to get a little bit more specific. Bye.